Hi class, my name's Nick. I hope you enjoyed our exhibit, Her Story, and learning about the role of Putnam women in the suffrage movement. Did everyone have a chance to look at the last panel of the exhibit with the words legacy written on top? Great. So then you know that the 19th Amendment not only gave women the right to vote, but it also set a precedent for more women to enter college education and gain employment in exciting new jobs. One of the biggest opportunities for women to enter the workforce was the Second World War. And while we celebrate 100 years of suffrage this year, we also remember the women who worked in the armed forces for the United States during the Second World War. To connect these two important historical events, today I'll tell you a little bit more about one of the women in our exhibit, Corporal Gertrude Cassetta, who served in the war. Make sure you pay close attention and follow along by adding any facts you learn to the web in your worksheet. So Cassetta was born on October 8, 1921, a little over a year after the 19th Amendment was ratified. She came from a Navy family and wanted to help the war effort by serving overseas in Europe. But the Navy would not send women overseas. Gertrude got her chance in the Air Force with the Signal Corps Office. She joined over 350,000 women who served in the armed forces for the United States during the conflict. And while women had previously served in wars before the Second World War in such roles as nursing, this conflict marks the first time that women were able to gain employment in a variety of new jobs, including Gertrude. She was a cryptographer. A cryptographer turns messages into secret messages by using a special code. Can anyone think why such a skill like that would be important for the US military? Exactly, so that messages sent from one soldier to another wouldn't be able to be read by enemy armies. In 1944, Gertrude was sent to Europe as part of the Women's Auxiliary Corps. She was part of a unit of 60 women cryptographers who worked day and night to code and decode messages on large machines. Gertrude and her unit served in some of the war's most important battles, and her unit worked in combat areas very close to the fighting, so she witnessed the destruction of the war firsthand. Gertrude said that during D-Day, there were so many planes in the air that the sky turned black. And during the Battle of the Bulge, there were so many injured Allied soldiers that Gertrude and her unit were called on to help the nurses to tend the wounded. Remembering her time in the conflict, Cassetta said that even though her unit was the only all-women cryptology unit in the service, that they were treated as equals with men because they were all soldiers. Now, while Gertrude had a positive experience in the war, not all women who served were treated this way. In our exhibit, you learned that the challenges faced by black women in the suffrage movement were often not addressed by some of the larger suffrage groups, such as the National American Women's Suffrage Association. You also learned that black women continued to face discrimination even through voting laws, discriminatory voting laws, even after the 19th Amendment was passed. In World War II, black women also faced discrimination. They had to work in segregated units, and black nurses could only tend to black soldiers. But black women persevered and still were able to gain employment in new opportunities and new jobs that they hadn't had access to previously, such as serving by driving supply trucks or also by helping deliver the mail to Allied troops in Europe. Overall, the story of Gertrude Cassetta and the role of women in the suffrage armed forces teach us about the legacy of the suffrage movement, as women continue to fight for equal opportunities in American society. Now, many women that had served in the armed forces were forced to give up their jobs after the conflict, but their experience demonstrated to the country that they are as strong and able as men, and it served as a reminder for the next women's suffrage movement in the 1960s. So to conclude our lesson today, you'll get a chance to learn about what cryptology might have really been like for Gertrude by decoding messages yourselves. We'll put you into groups and give each group a coded message. Once you uncode it, you'll learn a new fact about women's role in the war. Sound good? Let's get started.